Welcome back to the Combo Classroom for an evening live stream where I'd like to share an interesting story from today and some of the related science behind the concept and how it connects to some other things. And first of all, I do need to note I see a comment here noting that they got a TikTok advertisement with me in it, and one of my friends texted me like a day ago saying they saw one of my ads in a video, and I was like, "Wait, what?" I haven't signed up consciously for anything that puts my ads in videos. It's probably in TikTok's agreement that they're allowed to, or maybe I clicked a button on there once, but I haven't consciously made any deal or anything that puts my videos in ads. Kind of cool, I guess, that they're randomly showing up there. Interestingly, I used to post all my shorts on TikTok consistently as well as YouTube shorts, and grew a following there as well, but I haven't posted there in a while. I've only put out one or two shorts in a long time on there. I still need to, I've been planning on catching them up with the old ones from this YouTube shorts, and that's funny that they're using one of my videos in an ad. And that's the second time I've heard this. So someone please let me know where I can track that down or what's going on with that. Where can I watch this? I'm very curious. Anyway, feel free to leave any other thoughts and comments or updates to that, and I'll come back to that later in the live stream. But today, or tonight, I would like to tell you about how and why my neighborhood, among many neighborhoods in California, was told to evacuate, and I actually left the house in a semi-evacuation mode, and it turned out to be what you could call a false alarm or them being overly cautious. But the whole story does have some interesting details I thought you folks might want to hear. First of all, the backstory is that today there was a magnitude 7 or maybe even slightly higher than 7 earthquake in California. What do these magnitudes mean? Well, many people think they're associated with what's called the Richter scale. I myself only today was reminded that I fall into that misconception as well, that most of the modern systems based on this earthquake scales at this amount of points are not the Richter scale. They're updated, better scales that they're using. However, the media often falsely calls it a Richter measurement, even when it's sometimes not, because that's no longer considered the ideal way to quantify them by scientists. You know, time goes on and we get better systems. And so, interestingly, the measurement system they use isn't the Richter scale, but the media often just runs with that name because it's a well-known one and a common misconception. However, like the Richter scale, this goes logarithmically by a scale of 10, meaning that a 4.0 earthquake on both scales is somewhat 1/10 as big as a 5.0, or a 4.0 is somewhat 10 times as big as a 3.0. Now, how to measure how big it is isn't one clear, obvious, objective thing, because you can have how strong it is at the strongest point. You could have how much actually was the earth shaking versus how much effects do we feel on the surface based on how deep it was. You can have how wide of an area was spread. But generally a 7.0, and it was at least that occurred in California, is large. That's a big one. The biggest in history recorded so far is a 9.5, and that would be, you know, more than 100 times as big as a 7.0, but that was catastrophic level, and huge earthquakes can happen in catastrophic ways to the planet. And what can happen when an earthquake just hits the land is worse in one way, because it will, you know, cause buildings to crumble and mess up power grids, and possibly you'll get a building collapsed on you, and etc. But when it happens out in the water, there can be other problems. When an earthquake happens in the water, partially from the force that it just inherently generates, and partially from the effects it has underwater of causing other stuff to collapse that displaces water, a lot of water can get displaced. And there's a lot of water amount on the planet compared to the size of a given city or area. And so when the water swells the wrong way, it can cause catastrophic things such as tsunamis, which are a term for what's often called a tidal wave, although it's not tidal like the typical tides in the same way. It's caused by some force that displaces a lot of water. And so basically, this big earthquake, the bigger one, also caused a bunch of smaller, what you call afterquakes. They often come together, where when the plates of the earth are shaking, it's not just going to be a one and done always. There's little ripples of other seismic activity. And one of the ones that was pretty close-ish to where I am, the 7.0 is a bit further up north of California. I'm closer to what's called the SF Bay Area, and this was closer by what's called Humboldt in rough areas, bigger zones. And so it was higher up. However, if a bunch of water swells, it can make the other water swell. And one of the afterquakes was a lot closer to me that they first thought was a 5.8 and now has been reduced, last I read, to a 4.1 measured there. I guess maybe they got tricked by the big shake, exactly how much was from here or there or what. But that closer one, I think, is the key to why my particular area got the alert. Because once they found out it was a 4.1 instead of a 5.8 at the closer one, as well as combined with seeing that upper areas had not been ravaged by tsunamis, they, after not that long, declared that my neighborhood did not fully have to evacuate, that it was not an emergency, and that soon afterward that we could go back. However, the process to that was sort of interesting. First, everyone got a text-like thing from an alert system from the government. And I didn't see mine because I don't always carry my phone around. Sometimes my phone's in the other room when I'm working on stuff. And so then I just heard my family talking and be like, hey, did you hear about the tsunami warning? And my dad, I think, was at work somewhere. My mom and brother and my brother's girlfriend were here with me at the house. And we're like, okay, so they sent these texts saying that you're supposed to evacuate to higher ground. But at that point, I was kind of skeptical. We were thinking, okay, maybe we should just run some errands on higher ground just to be cautious. But I wasn't really freaking out, even though it was a very scary sounding text. It said something like, you are in danger. Evacuate to higher land. Do not wait. It was like really urgent sounding. But at that point, we were still like, okay, let's just keep up with the news, see what's going on. We had all the cats at the house and stuff anyway, and they were hard to find at the moment. They were off on some adventure. So I didn't even know how we'd get them somewhere. But then I live relatively close, not hyper close, but pretty close enough to hear, to a fire station. And this fire station is where certain types of emergency alerts go off. They even test this system every Wednesday, where it's this loud siren thing they test at noon every Wednesday. But when I heard a siren, me and my whole family each individually thought, like, is it Wednesday? Oh no, it's not Wednesday. And this siren sound starts going off, not a car siren, but a big one. And then this voice comes over the thing that you could hear throughout the whole neighborhood that's like, evacuate to higher ground now. You do not wait. Get to higher ground. Tsunami alert. Warning. And so at that point, we were like, okay, well, you should really get out of here. And I was freaking out for a number of reasons. Partially, like, my mom can't walk very fast, so I was trying to make sure she could get to the car. My cats were there and I couldn't find them, so I was figuring stuff out, started evacuating, and decided what we'll do is we'll just go up the hill briefly at least, and we can come back if we need to try, if we have time, and see if we can see anything happening. Because the way they phrased it was like, okay, now might be around the time we could look at the water and see something different, like it's swollen up over more of the coast than it should be or something. And this was really tripping me out because I have this recurring thing in my dreams. I have a lot of recurring aspects of my dreams, but one recurring thing is being within the first signs, and usually it's like raining and storming to a mild degree in the dream, not today. And I'm in the middle of some tsunami like warning. And it recurs a lot in my dreams in many different circumstances that there's some type of warning and I have to get away from this weird natural disaster. One of these times was especially surreal of a dream I'll mention a little later, but first I'll start in the real world story. So, when we evacuated, I hadn't gone to the bathroom right before I left the house, so I really had to pee. So I'm up in the hills, like, oh man, I really got to pee, but even though it's an evacuation, like, well, where do I go? And so me and my mom were way up the hill, up by some nature. So while she made some calls in the car and just like checked what was up with it, I went out on a like miniature hike to go out into the woods and to find somewhere to pee. And my old shoes broke recently, and I am wearing these like fancier feeling shoes that I got as hand-me-ups from my younger brother who has a similar shoe size. And so they were all slippery compared to the type of hiking shoes I usually wear. And I'm like, am I dreaming right now? Because I'm going up this like surreal looking staircase. It's up at one of the parks up in the hills of the area. That it's a surreal part of it, and I'm like slipping up this infinite looking staircase, like not able to walk as well as usual. And I'm like, and there might be a tsunami coming. And I was like, oh my God, am I dreaming or something? This feels a lot like what has happened in my dreams before. But then when I came back and met up with my mom, not too long after that, we got an alert that they're like, tsunami warning canceled. And it's like, canceled? So we went back, and there was no water anywhere near the house. And I was like, okay, they fully canceled it, huh? What does it mean it's canceled? And what that meant, I guess, is that at first they have to react with like utter caution because you can't really predict what'll happen with the water after an earthquake out at sea. Different things can happen undersea that cause different amounts of water to fly places. And so at first they have to be like, these are all the zones that could flood. And technically, I was in one of the zones that could flood because I'm not that far, not that many blocks from the water. Not like by the water side, but like not that many blocks over. And so then when I got back and it was all safe, I was like, well, given that they say the alert is canceled for here because I guess the earthquake did not cause any huge crazy ripples, at least to come down here. It turns out, first of all, they thought it was a 5.8 earthquake, a smaller one that had happened closer to my realm, and that was a 4.1. That is about 15 times off because of how it's a logarithmic scale. So part of why it was a false alarm is that they misestimated one of the quakes by 15-fold. And which can happen. It's hard to measure these things exactly. And partially, I'm not sure on all the details, but I went down to the marina, it was one of the nicest days I'd ever seen there. There was not one hint of extra water where there shouldn't be. The tides come up and down, so it was hard to measure like if the tide rose an inch or didn't, because there's different times just during the day the tide rises that much. But it was such a beautiful day. In fact, when I took some videos that I'm going to show here, and I'm going to show some videos of how beautiful today was, contrasted with what I was worried about happening as a middle bad scenario, which is that if there was some flooding in my neighborhood, not enough to destroy the house or anything, but enough that there was flooding just to any degree. That happens even after rainfall because the streets here are really badly designed, or they don't have good drains, or they're the wrong shape or something. The streets flood after rainfall in a lot of places near my house. You'll be walking and I'll have to cross the street because this half of the street is just like this lake-like thing. Cars just have to splash right through it. And they worked on fixing some of the streets to get that out, but not all of them. And the next clip I'll show here is going to be when just like a week or so ago, when it was hyper flooded just from some rain. And so if there had been a tsunami here, even a mid-level one, I can imagine the floodwater would have stayed for a while and caused a lot of damage. You don't want your stuff underwater because water will take a toll on it. Now, let me pull open the screen capture, which does this thing and a thing for a minute before I get it ready. But right here, I have a folder of a few videos I set aside that are applicable here. Now, let's get that somewhere better. Okay. And first of all, today I first went by a lake that's on the way to closer to the full bay. First, I stopped by a lake where it was like the tsunami would have had to be pretty bad for that lake to have been drastically different. And here's what it looked like. It was just so beautiful and nice and calm. It was like more than average, an anti-tsunami day. Look at how beautiful that reflection of those clouds are. And like, wait here, let me mute the screen capture just in case there's like a lot of noise in the videos or anything. Now, here's one or two more quick ones of today. Just like stunningly gorgeous. Look at these clouds. This was by the actual part of the bay, where this is the part that would have started tsunamiing if there had been a big problem. One last one from today. Just gorgeous out. And such calm water, like more calm water than average. It was weird. It was almost like it made an anti-tsunami or something. Now, here's, for comparison, what happened to the area just after it rained. So this is normally a trail, right? I went out while it was raining. I got soaked when I went out to film these videos, but it was fun. And this wasn't today. This was about a week ago. This is normally a trail. It's a river now. And when I went to the street, here's me coming up toward the street.
Well, I guess that's a dead end.
And here, I was just saying, well, I guess that's a dead end. And that's one of the streets I would have had to cross. And it gets like several feet deep there. They had closed this one off to cars. Here's a little more of that flooded bit. Look at this giant flooded bit. This was just from some rainfall. And there were some cars on the other side of these train tracks that didn't know what to do because there's only one other possible exit from there. And it's normally a one-way street the other way, which they must have changed this day because they blocked this street. But there were people just waiting there like, what do I do? It's closed, but they didn't know about the only other way across the train tracks from that park. And anyway, that is what I was worried even a super miniature version of the tsunami might have been. Okay, now I'm going to reappear. And those were just a few little clips. I have been taking a lot of walks out in nature recently, rain or shine. Today was shine. To get location scouting of where the wind isn't as bad, but I can still see really beautiful water to film more places. Because some of the places where it's really beautiful in that area is really windy, which is hard for the camera. So I've been finding some cool locations that will be showing up in the near future. I even filmed some clips on my own down there for the next main combo class episode. And before I move forward with the earthquake stuff, I will quickly do my obligatory reminder. If you haven't yet, make sure to see my most recent main episode about fractals on my combo class channel, which is linked in the description. So check that out after you leave the stream if you haven't seen that yet. And the new episode on that channel will be coming out within a week. Now, looking around here, I'm going to answer some comments before I move on with the facts/stories related to earthquakes and stuff. We have some notes of someone who was from Santa Cruz for a while. I know that area very well. I'm north of Santa Cruz, so it's, not... Santa Cruz is half an hour or an hour south of me, but I love Santa Cruz. I've gone camping in that area so many times. Beautiful. And Here, somebody says being skeptical of an alert like this is unthinkable to you. Is America okay? Now, here's the thing: is normally when you get the alert, you would assume, yeah, you gotta follow the alert. And it's not that I didn't trust the alert, but where I am, I'm not that close to the water, and there's stuff like a freeway and stuff in between. It's like it goes like water, then some like in and out windy nature where the water has to go through some more stuff, and then a lake that's more self-contained, and then these train tracks, and then I'm some blocks past that. And there is a bit of a hill. So it would have had to be really bad for it to actually reach my house. And when I looked into it later, although I'd gotten the text, another source was saying that it was an area 2 blocks away from me or so. A few, 1, 2, 3-ish blocks away from me was actually, I guess, where the stricter evacuation zone was. But I got the text, which must have been, since they might not know exactly which phone numbers go to which address, I don't know. And then I'm close enough to the fire station that I heard that really loud alert. And when I heard the alert coming from the local fire station, I was like, okay, we got to get out of here right now. So I wasn't really skeptical, I would say, about the alert. More thinking that when I first got the alert, before the thing started going, the earthquake had just happened, and it was way far north. And so at that point, it would have been at least half an hour before waves had an effect on my region. And so from the ocean. So it seemed like there was a few minutes to like check what was going on online and see if I could get any clear updates, because it wasn't very clear. There's only a few sentences in the text. So I do recommend that you should always follow those. If I hadn't heard the thing from the fire alarm, we would have gone anyway, but we wouldn't have been feeling as urgent about it. As soon as I heard it from the fire station, I went into more urgent mode. Now, I do recommend, gotta trust alerts like that. You can't, the fact that it wasn't a problem does not mean the alert had any problem. They miscalculated the earthquake, but that's gonna happen sometimes. And whether or not they did, they may have issued the warning, because you want to be more safe than sorry, and you don't know how the water is going to react to an earthquake that's offshore exactly. And so, because from what I've read, more of the giant waves that come from tsunamis are not as much just from the earthquake's force inherently, but from undersea, the force causing like caves to cave in or things like that. And so anything that displaces a lot of water can be crazy. So I do recommend being extra cautious about those alerts. The other reminder I want to note is that if I didn't have the cats in the house, I probably would have gone at the first from the text and just been like, why not be better safe than sorry? But I didn't want to leave the cats there until it seemed like hyper urgent. And at that point, I was like, okay, please climb a tree. And I couldn't find the cats. I could find one of them, who's the one we would never be able to get into a box into the car. And the other two I could not find. But they're really good climbers. There's tall things around here, so they always climb on the fence. If for some reason that wasn't enough, they know how to climb up the trees. I've seen it. So I was hoping that would be okay. But part of why I was less urgent until I heard this giant siren-like alarm saying, like, basically, no, actually, leave. The cats were a factor, because I love my cats dearly. And we have a note from Finn Boltz, who discovered a relationship between geometric series and the ellipse. That sounds cool. Feel free to comment it here, or, although I'm still catching up on getting back to a lot of messages people have given me, you could feel free to message me somewhere, like my contact email on the page or the Discord. But I am still getting back to a lot of people still. But whether or not I see it instantly do feel free to message me. Or if it's short enough to give a hint, you could leave a comment about it. And some comments about what a weird day. And it was very weird for that reason. Especially, it felt first really surreal because it was similar to the dreams I've had. Then, when the urgency passed, surreal because when I went to the marina, it was one of the most beautiful days. It was the clouds and the sun and the bright blue sky and like the calm water more than average. It was weird. It was like I said, like a reverse tsunami or something. And we have a comment too from 815 type serious about carrying a bucket of water will show you pretty quickly how water can get crazy. And yep. And someone said, what a weird year, too. Yeah, maybe it was just one of the bows on top of it, where it has been a very weird year. Some people joke, semi-jokingly, about how we do seem to have glitched into some weird simulation about 5 years ago. But if this simulation is the one where people watch Combo Class and I'm here in some shape and form, then we'll roll with it for now. And now I do want to briefly note a really surreal dream I had in the past. The craziest of the tsunami dreams I've had in the past. It was ambiguous whether it was a tsunami or hurricane, but there was one of the times where there was this weird hurricane or tsunami type thing in my dream. It was raining a bunch and going crazy. And at one point, I was up on a ledge that was similar looking to being up on the hill today and looking down at the city. But this time, I could see giant waves rolling in the dream. And I was like, oh my God, get back in the car, move that way, that way. And then this is the really weird bit. So it was storming in the dream. And I was in this park. And the sky started like glitching, kind of. It was like the storm was making like something in the sky glitch in some way, getting like staticky almost. And then when I was like, what's going on up there in the sky? I looked down closer to the horizon and I saw the date and time in the corner, sort of like you'd see on like a menu bar of a computer. They were like in the bottom of the sky. And it was just the most surreal thing. And I didn't really put together what it meant in the dream because I was like, I'm fleeing. There's more bad stuff coming. But my subconscious, I'm not sure if it was hinting at whether there was some storm that was like crashing some sort of simulation we were actually in, or whether the storm itself was related to the simulation glitching, or maybe some combo of those. Because looking back on it when I woke up, I was like, maybe the storm all along was related to some computer glitch happening. Or maybe some computer glitch just happened because of the storm. I don't know. But that made today have an extra hint of surreality, along with other dreams that do recur as recent as within the past week I had one of these, where I have very long, winding, strange dreams, and one of the things that recurs is there being some weird natural disaster related to water. Now, as for things from my actual past, I noted that the neighborhood floods a lot, and if you want to see more flooding around here, there are points in grade -1 of Combo Class, a bit in grade -2 also, but it was even worse in grade -1, where the yard was so flooded. There's a few bits in grade -1, the main episodes on the Combo Class channel, probably some bonus stuff too, where it's just like, it was a lake back here. It was insane. Now, funny enough, this week, the 3 houses that include my family's house and 2 other ones up there that share a yard are working on installing a system to divert the water better. And like a more well-like thing for water to collect and more of a path for it to go down and some other stuff. And that's because this flooding season is like right now that the rains normally would be doing this. I wouldn't have been surprised at all if a week ago, if I had predicted today was going to be water related, some weird water disaster is going to happen. But I would have been really surprised it was tsunami related. I would have been like, oh, it's probably going to rain again and cause crazy floods and stuff. But this was a quite different type. It was the driest water related day I've ever had. And about earthquakes and tsunamis, although I haven't had a tsunami in my life, I have felt earthquakes. In California, there are places where it's extra like that, where there's a fault line. And I'm not that far from some fault lines in comparison to a lot of the world. And so you get earthquakes here. There could be a bad one someday. If anything is going to like fully collapse the classroom, like destroy half the stuff at once, it would be an earthquake. But let's hope that won't happen. Let's hope that when the earthquake happens, the classroom is in a cool bubble that protects everything. Or let's just hope that the earthquake doesn't occur for a very long time. They will happen periodically through the Earth's lifespan. And I was reading about the maximum they could get to. And the first source I saw, although I didn't look that deep into this, I'll read more into it later, so don't quote me on this. But I read that about a 12.0 on the common scales might be the maximum due to just how much fault line could fit on the Earth. Because it's a specific thing happening with earthquakes. It's plates, it's related to tectonic shift of plates. And a lot of these natural disasters are connected. They relate to the fact that there's a lot of lava under a lot of other types of rock, under a lot of types of water, and also some parts of the rock that are sticking up still. So, and moving. So, remember that once we were in, all the continents were in one blob together before they shifted apart. And it's predicted under many models that someday in the distant future it'll happen again. All of them will come back together and merge into one mass yet again. Now, luckily I have not had many natural disasters at all, but they do vary by region. And an earthquake or possibly tsunami would be the type that I would be at risk for here. And other places are at risk of other sorts of disasters more so. I mean, anything could happen here, but some more focus on particular areas than other. Overall, I don't think any tsunami type stuff happened, but I'm sure the earthquake caused some damage up there. Luckily, it was out in the water and not right in a city somewhere, because 7.0 would do a lot of damage to a city. But I read that a lot of people's power got knocked out in Northern California in an area, and I wouldn't be surprised if there was other issues like that, similar to powers getting knocked out. So, quite interesting. We'll see if we ever have to make an episode fully about earthquakes, because one strikes here, and it's crazy enough that it deserves that. Or maybe someday I will make another bonus video related to the misconception about calling things the Richter scale when really it's this other one. Let me see what the name of the other one was. I forget. It starts in an M. It's the one that's often used is the moment magnitude scale. However, the news often calls it the Richter scale. And now it is considered, the moment magnitude is considered the authoritative magnitude scale, according to this. And with a few more comments here, thanks to everyone who is happy that I am safe and such. And I'm also glad that me and everyone else who could have been even more affected did not have any sorts of tsunamis. And if anyone did have problems from any of these earthquakes, because some of the smaller ones were on land, not all of, just the biggest one was in the water. And if anything bad happened to anyone, I wish they're doing very well, hopefully. And remember that as disasters do strike, that is the type of, although it's always difficult to know if you're going to try and put out work to help the world through like public service or donating or anything, it's hard to know exactly which organizations are the right ones you'd want to work with, that it's actually your work is helping pay off, particularly if you made like just a donation or something. But that is a type of thing we should make sure to try and help each other with. more so, it shouldn't be on us to do it. It should be an aspect, even larger so, of government programs to be ready for that and to help people who have natural disasters. But given that the government doesn't fully do that, we can also try our best that if you ever have the chance to help out somebody, friend, family, or stranger who's in a natural disaster, remember your empathy of how bad you would feel if all of your stuff was getting destroyed by a tsunami. Maybe you didn't even know if all of your friends and stuff were safe. Luckily, that has not occurred here, but a lot of things like that do happen around the world. I don't know as much about what types of natural disasters hit in which zones outside the United States of America, which is where I live. And while really that's not necessarily any more interesting than the rest of the world, the whole world's interesting, just for practicality purposes, I know a little more about the natural disasters that would occur around here. But leave a comment if you have any experiences with your region, wherever it is, having any particular thing that it's at risk of, or the opposite, any particular thing that it almost never gets. And we also have a comment from someone whose cat is playing fetch with them right now. That is very cute. My cats love to play games like that too. Their favorite game is called Apple. It's where I pick the extra small apples that sometimes the trees have too many apples and you're supposed to prune them so the other ones have room to grow. The small ones that need to get pruned, I will throw those in the yard and the cats will run and get them and chase them and bat them around. Sometimes they also like playing with ping pong balls and they're really good. They'll dribble the ping pong ball. They can like bounce it for a few things and they'll scurry around with it super fast, like dribbling it and stuff until they lose it under, it'll go under something and then I have to get it for them. But yeah, my cats actually like playing a lot. I think that a lot of cats enjoy playing even beyond the age of kitten. My cats are far past the age of kitten. They're like, I don't know, like 7 years old or something, approximately. And they love playing still. And I think that a lot of people overstate the differences between cats and dogs. They're relatively similar on the big scale of animals, at least domesticated cats and domesticated dogs. And I think they have a lot of traits that the other ones have. So a lot of traits that people just associate with dogs, I can notice in my good, happy cats, such as they like playing and they come when they're called. If you call their names, they come. And they follow rules. You tell them, don't go in there. They understand the tone. If you say in a particular tone, don't go in there, they won't go in there again. They're really good. They're the best. Dandelion, sage, and sassafras. Sassafras being the newest. He was a stray just a few years ago. Now, we have some other notes. Somebody just mentioned log scale. And yes, these earthquakes are a logarithmic scale. And if I ever do more content about log scales, maybe we can use earthquakes as an example. Although the actual formula for how they calculate it's pretty complicated. If you look at like the moment magnitude earthquake, there's a lot of things they have to factor in. How wide it is, how much this and that. I haven't looked as much into that one. I'll look later into the moment magnitude scale's definition, but the Richter, for example, the original formula is log of 10a, or log base 10a, minus log base 10... Well, okay, let me say what these are. Where one is the maximum excursion of the Wood-Anderson seismograph, minus log base 10 of the empirical function that depends on the epicentral distance. So that relates to how far it spreads from the epicenter, I guess. And this first one I mentioned, maybe how strong it is. So you have to factor both those in. So they have some way of taking the log of those and then subtracting them, where that's the old one that's not considered as good anymore. Here we have the moment magnitude one says it's a dimensionless value that equals 2/3 of log base 10 of the seismic moment in dyne times centimeters. The dyne is a derived unit of force specified in something. Okay, so it says here that it's, let me just show this on, or I don't know. I'll research it more later. Anyway, the formula is 2/3 of log base 10 times a seismic moment as measure of force minus 10.7. And I guess this particular way of measuring the force factors in how wide it is and how strong it is at the epicenter, maybe. However, it's hard to know exactly what the cutoff of one earthquake and the next one is, I imagine, because when there's one earthquake, there's a lot of smaller ones that pop up. And it's also interesting, something that would be really cool, I don't know if we'll be able to do this, but would be to someday make, from scratch maybe, one of the ancient types of devices that people would use in ancient times to calculate whether an earthquake was coming. They had ways of doing it, devices that were set up in a particular way where a normal force wouldn't knock something over, but an earthquake type force would. And that's very interesting to me, like old versions of how they created things like an earthquake detector or, say, an alarm clock, or how would you make things like these back in the day? And that'll be fun in the future to try making some of those things. I already know there's going to be a trying to make homemade alarm clocks bonus video using historical method, or no, a whole episode someday. But maybe we'll also have one someday about trying to make an okay, now I'm thinking of a lot of concepts at once. Maybe someday we'll try and do one about trying to measure earthquakes somehow. Now, we have a joke about a mathematician doing physics meme is real. I don't know what meme you mean. You mean probably that I'm not as good at physics as I am with math, and that it took me a while to figure out what each of the things was correlating to. I was reading it more as just an equation, and then each variable I had to figure out what they were. So I didn't know what the variables were there, but they had it written in a sort of weird equation form where I was looking at it. So if I really set my mind to it, I wouldn't be the worst at physics in the world, but I also wouldn't be the best in the world. Physics is friends with math, and they overlap a lot, but physics is in the realm of applied math, which, while I'm interested in and know a bit about, I know more about what you'd call pure math that's a little more abstract. However, I'm still very interested in designing things, and I have some experience with particular examples of that I will share, and new ones as I learn them. Now, we also have a comment from someone in NorCal, Mike Bolt, who got an emergency alert but didn't feel the earthquake. That's good that you didn't feel anything there. I think the ones people felt are probably less so the big one off the coast and more so the small ones that were on land, but I'm not sure exactly what causes you to feel the shaking. The shaking's very weird. When I've been in smaller earthquakes before, it is very surreal. It's like the ground is just like jello sliding back and forth, sort of. And you're like, whoa. And you're not sure. And whenever it happens, you're usually inside. And you're like, when you're outside, you feel extra lucky. If you're on a hike or something, you're like, okay, this is usually easier. Well, maybe not under big trees. But if you're like out in a meadow or something, you're like, oh, this is a pretty good place for an earthquake. But if you're inside, nowhere seems good to go. It's like, okay, well, do I go in the doorway? That protects me from a lot of force. But if the door swings on me, that's not going to be good. Do I try and go like under a bed? Do I try and go in the bathtub? There's different recommendations I've heard. So you never know exactly what the best place to go in the earthquake is. And you're sort of just trying to wait it out. But if you're not in a great place, if you're next to something really tall or whatever, or unsturdy, you have this game where you're like, okay, is it riskier to try and move while it's shaking or to stay here? So you got to think quick in that situation. Luckily, I have never gotten injured by an earthquake. And there was a very big one in San Francisco, not that far from me, historically. I'm not in San Francisco. I'm in the East Bay, but it's relatively close. And historically, there was a very big one there. Luckily, before my time. And we have a note from Bjorn that in Sweden, they have a natural disaster winter every year. And That sort of natural disaster, I don't know if we would call it a disaster, but more so just nature's very intense there, maybe. Nature just being extra strong or something. But yeah, sometimes nature can be harsher in some areas than others. In the winter, it is easier here than a lot of places because it doesn't snow hardly at all where I am. You'll see 0 snowflakes to like 10 snowflakes throughout the year. Yeah, like if you go up in the hills, sometimes in winter, there's little patches of snow. But like here at my house here, it doesn't. Although it's hailed before, which is always an interesting one. And actually, there was like once or twice, maybe a few snowflakes came where my house is, but like not enough to make it look white on the ground. There's If you go up to the hill, it was like a weird event a year or two ago that there was like a significant amount of snow in the hills, and it only lasted like a day before it melted. Um, so I do often, a lot of winters, not everyone, I haven't in a few years, but I do often go to somewhere with snow in the winter because it can be neat, it can be fun. In fact, there was one time, I have a video of this, maybe I'll share someday, where I got my friends to, there wasn't snow at my friend's cabin, but there was snow at this lake near it. So I got my friends to agree to bring a cooler to the lake, fill it with an empty cooler, fill it with snow, bring the snow back to the cabin so we could have a snowball fight at the cabin. Because if you have a snowball fight, then afterward, maybe you just want to hop in the shower or change your clothes or something when you're like wet and dirty and stuff. But we couldn't do that all the way up at the lake. We didn't want to have a snowball fight and then have to come all the way back. So I convinced them that it was a good idea, and they did end up having fun, to bring a bunch of snow and have a homemade snowball fight. Now, we have a lot of other cool comments, but I am probably pretty soon going to wrap up the live stream. It was a pretty minor topic, in terms of how many facts I'm teaching, or in terms of some aspects, but it was a pretty weird day. That's never happened in my life. I wanted to share to anyone who's heard about the earthquakes in California that I am safe, but there was a mildly funny story that caused me to briefly evacuate in a panic before I knew I was safe. And then, surreal enough, it was a very nice, pleasant day actually by the water when I ended up walking down there. So, to anyone who missed some of that, this live stream will be in video form. Most of them I save as videos after the fact. And I mean, it's on the live tab of the channel, but it's like a video. So feel free to rewatch this earlier bit if you missed most of that story. But I am going to wrap up in a moment. Make sure that if you are interested in triangular numbers, you check out the bonus video I put on this channel yesterday about that. Just a kind of random but informative bonus video about 3 different ways to look at the justifications or proofs of why triangular numbers have a particular formula. One way using normal algebra-ish stuff, one way using visuals, and one way using sort of algebra, but also induction. And the next big thing to look forward to is on my combo class channel. The last episode about fractals is linked in the description here, and the next one I filmed a little bit of it, but I do have it very planned out enough that on my next filming day on Saturday, I do plan to film the whole episode. Apart from the few bits I've got, I have it close to scripted. I don't fully script it because I like to have a little ad-lib room, but I have all the notes of the topics and facts I want to say in it, brainstormed. And so that will be coming out within a week, and it will be about some fun types of number in number theory, and a few fundamental sequences, but also sort of the multiplicative backbones of them. You'll see what I mean when that episode comes out. And we do have a note from Bjorn that 7 is 2/3 of a triangular number. Its left side is missing. And it does look like 2/3 of a triangle. And it's not 2/3 of a triangular number, but I get what you mean. It's the digit 7 it's 2/3 of a triangular digit, we could say. Remember, and this is something that someday I will make a more clear bonus video clarifying to a lot of people. But remember how important it can be, the difference between numbers and digits. Digits are a single, and that, wait, three categories: numbers, digits, and numerals. So I actually, more than digit, what I almost meant there is numeral, which digit sometimes can imply, but sometimes can imply the more numerical thing. But those are all different. So remember the difference between those. Maybe I'll clarify it more in a bonus video someday. And thank you all for joining me to hear about an interesting story. I will catch you folks in the next bonus video or whatever content. There will also be more shorts coming very soon that I have begun filming and stockpiling a few of. Somebody please comment, let me know if what's up with seeing TikTok using one of my videos in one of their advertisements. That really surprises me, because while I have a decent following there are like 50,000 subscribers or whatever you call subscribers on there. I don't use TikTok really myself as a viewer. I only use YouTube. And that's why I sort of fell off from posting all my shorts on TikTok. But I've already been planning on catching it up with the ones it's missing. And that's interesting that they would randomly right now, and I haven't posted there in a long time, use one of my videos in an ad. And I didn't sign up for anything like that, so I don't know. But I suppose it could only be good unless don't put me in an advertisement for something I would hate. And I guess I'm not really a TikTok user, but I'll assume it's a good thing because I'm a TikTok poster, and maybe some more people will look it up because of that. Maybe we'll get a few random new combo lords trickle into the mix because of that ad. I don't know. So I'll treat it as a cool thing, but I am going to look more into that. Somebody please comment after the fact on this video if you have seen where or what that video is. I'll ask the Discord too. Someone there probably knows. There is a combo class Discord linked in the description, and subreddit and things like that. And if you want to be extra helpful, if you are able to support in any way, there is a Patreon and YouTube memberships and stuff. Anyways, that's all for today or tonight's live stream. Thank you all for joining me, and I love you. I will catch you again